Good afternoon and good evening and good morning and wherever you are in the world right now listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. And I have a really special guest. I read one of his books. I've got a few more to go. I got another 5 books, another 4 books to go, so I believe, but we're going to get there. So basically, I'm a sales strategist. I'm a sales coach, sales training coach. But really today it's about gifted sales leaders. Leaders in their field, leaders that actually make a difference in what they do, and they make a difference in other people's lives so they can engage more and so that they can sell more, but they can help the customer in more of a dynamic way and a different approach. We'll also be talking about tech within sales and lots of artificial intelligence and all of that sort of stuff as well, which is also quite fascinating. The way I look at it, it's always fascinating. So my guest today has an extraordinary job and is one of the talented people. And I say that because I've been following you for a while. So we were just speaking just beforehand about bare knuckle selling, and Simon Hazeldine didn't actually do his own voiceover. He got someone else to do it, which was awesome as well. But welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, happy to. No, I didn't have any choice in the voiceover. We were chatting, the audio, I offered to do it, and they turned it down and decided because they were going to use a professional actor. And when I heard the actual narration, I realised he was about 9 million times better than I was going to have been. So got a nice avenue.
Sometimes you just go, well, they are good at what they do, and I have to be quite humbled by them.
Yeah.
I'll do the writing. I'll do the selling stuff and or the explanations and all that. The voiceover and the actors, you pay them to do a job, and they do an extremely good job.
Yeah.
And so Simon, and they're professional, and that's why I like speaking to people like yourself, because the way I look at it is I learn, and I like to give people ideas from these podcasts. So there's golden nuggets of information that they can help and they can learn and they can grow. For me, it's like an MBA. I learn so much from this. And I'm also very humbled and very honored with people like yourself. So really, tell me about how you got into what you're doing and a little bit of your backstory before we get into the meat and bones of what you actually do right now.
Yeah, sure. So I think like quite a lot of people, I came into sales kind of by accident. I think it was Brian Tracy who said people end up in sales because they can't get a proper job, as a humorous comment. And I left university with a pretty bad degree in a subject I wasn't particularly interested in pursuing a career in, and didn't really have much idea what to do. And I had a sort of a couple of typical dodgy student jobs, and I extended one of those for a while, took on a sort of full-time thing, and then worked in a warehouse driving a forklift truck and stuff, just because I just no idea what I wanted to do. And then I don't specifically remember who it was or quite how it happened, but I found out about that someone was looking for kind of door-to-door canvassers for what was then Guardian Royal Exchange for mortgages. So I started going door knocking in the evening. So I was doing my sort of 9 to 5 job in the day, and then went sort of door knocking, canvassing for leads for this company, and actually was sort of seen to be reasonably good at it. I think just because I just kind of went for it, if you like. I don't think it's anything to do with skill. And then one of the canvassers on the team, after 2 or 3 weeks, they said, "Oh, buddy, by the way, word in your ear, Sky TV are looking for a canvassing team, door-to-door team, and they're going to give us kind of 25 quid every time we get someone to sign up for a 30-day trial." And that was like tons. This was
big time,
many years. We're talking 30. So 25 quid was a pretty good deal. So I was like, oh, that sounds quite good fun. So we sort of decamped from Guardian Royal Exchange and went working with Sky in the evening. So 9 to 5, I was working working, in my day job, and then sort of 6:30 I'd start going out door knocking. And what transpired that I ended up earning kind of more money in the evenings. I think, I don't know, 500, £600 a week or something in the evenings versus the day.
Yeah.
Also, I transitioned in my day job. I came out of the warehouse, went in the office, and started answering inbound sales over the phone. And it was sort of. I'm not saying I was really skillful at it, but I just felt comfortable at it and comfortable at home. And somebody had said to me, if you do want to go into sales, door to door is a great place to start. And I definitely would not want to do it now. Don't get me
Oh,
wrong.
absolutely not. Yeah.
But it was a really good grounding. And then I got a different job with an outbound telephone sales company, selling kind of printer paper, etc., computer paper back in the day. And then just in the local paper, there was an advert from Whitbread, the big. So they owned. People know them for kind of hotels and Premier Inn, but at that stage they had a big drinks company, big brewing company, and I went for that job and got it and kind of doubled my salary, which was kind of cool at the time. But the most important thing was, and I didn't realize how fortunate I was at the time, but I got a 4-week residential boot camp in selling from one of the top fast-moving consumer goods companies in the country, and that was without a shadow of a doubt the foundation for me, and also a very strong approach to personal development in the company, but also that sales managers would spend a lot of time working with you in the field and coaching you. So, I got this wonderful kind of first 2 years boot camp foundation, then stayed with the organization for about 18 years, ended up heading up the sales academy. When I was a sales manager, I fell in love with developing people and seeing growth, and that's where I fought a bit of a battle. And then I was promoted to be sort of a national account manager, account controller, account director. But all the time I was kind of pushing to go into the sales training arena, which was actually being resisted at the time by my boss and my boss's boss, because they had plans for me. But I think eventually I just wore them down. And they went off, for goodness sake, let's just let him head up the sales academy and he'll shut up. So did that for them, which was wonderful. And then spent a couple of years in leadership development and talent at an EMEA level. And then I served my time and I wanted to do my own thing. And eventually plucked up the courage after 18 years of a nice corporate job, safe, private medical insurance, pension, really nice car, to took the jump. So I managed to engineer a kind of a redundancy and got a little bit of quite a nice payoff, which was just a cushion to set up my own consultancy. And so then, and I'd always wanted to be a professional speaker as well. So but I'd started moonlighting. In the last couple of years of being employed, I was using kind of half my holiday to go and do some speaking and do some private work. So I was able to sort of dip my toe, and then hence now, doing what I'm doing.
Awesome. That's a really good journey. And that resonates with me on the door knocking as well, because I've been there and it's incredibly tough, but that makes you hugely resilient. I did it from the Square Mile. For people that don't know what the Square Mile is in the centre of London, the financial districts.
Yeah.
And there I was given a Rolodex, really basic training. I wish I had the training like you did. And he said, well, there you go. And I went, oh, right, okay. And but it does give you huge amounts of I use the word again, resilience, but it also gives you a little bit of no, yes, no, yes. That certain thing that you get over a period of time. So tell me what the from your point of view, from your side of things, the key characteristics that made you successful and what you've done in the corporate career, and then since there. So what things, just your trigger points?
Yeah, I think I talk about and it was something that was a guy who was a military background and special forces, and called it like the winner's triangle. 3 points of a triangle: attitude, skills, and knowledge. And I can remember the conversation kind of went, how important do you think attitude is to success, out of 100%? And I probably trotted out, 80, 90%. And the answer from this guy, from his background, was actually it's only 50%. And, 30% is probably skills and 20% is knowledge, and I'm kind of like, whoa, hang on, how come it's so low? And he said, well, what do you get if you motivate an idiot? Well, you get a motivated idiot. So, I'm a great believer in positivity, etc. However, having the right mental attitude, you can be a highly motivated underachiever, but what's your skill set like? What's your knowledge set like? You've really got to, for success in sales, for example, you've really got to know your product knowledge and your customers inside and out, and you've got to get out your own head and get inside their head. But also it's the skill set, and of course the attitude, the stickability, the mental toughness, the resilience, of course. But door to door, it was that old classic sales. You make this many calls and you get a sale, which is fantastic. However, that's the numbers game, and I think it's probably that kind of approach is probably less and less successful now. People are more and more resistant to that kind of old school approach. So I think you've got to be smarter. So you've got to have the skills, and the brains to be thinking, I think, more strategically about your approach to sales. I mean, without a doubt, the positivity, the enthusiasm is important. But I've always been a voracious learner and reader and listener, and to this day. And I think the concept is probably best exemplified was 6 or 7 years ago. I heard about these kind of special forces inspired endurance events. So there's the Paris 10, which is you get to run the parachute regiment 10-mile qualification course, £35 rucksack Bergen. And then there's the fan dance, which is the first part, goes up and down Penny Fan Mountain twice, which is the first part of Special Air Service, Special Boat Service, UK Special Forces selection. It's about just short of a 16-mile up and down. And I've done those. I've done both of those.
I was going to ask you that, actually. Did you actually do that?
Yeah, I've done them a few times, and probably, the fan dance particularly one of the most painful things I've ever done, without a shadow of a doubt. And 1 year my buddy and I, we did what we call the double. So we did the Paris 10 twice, once at Catterick and once at Colchester, and then we did the fan dance twice. And the interesting thing, knocking around with people from Special Forces, they had it on the t-shirt, little souvenir t-shirts and the little patches you get, and it's this concept always a little further. So there is this, it goes back to the founding values of David Sterling, the SAS, this commitment to excellence is, there's always another bit to go, like +1 people, marginal gains, 1% better, 1% better. But it's this mindset that no matter how good you are, there's always room for improvement. You can always go a little bit further, always go that bit further, always +1 it. So, once you become reasonably proficient at anything, for example, your growth curve slows down, you plateau, or it's less, but you still got to be learning, particularly because the world is changing so fast, so rapidly. So a lot of salespeople, I've been working with a lot of our clients on helping people transition to virtual remote selling. How do you manage salespeople remotely? And that's a whole new. We've done we'll have previously done some Zoom calls or Teams calls or WebExes or Adobe Meet Me's. But not as much as we're doing now, and there's a different skill set in that, and that's why you just got to keep constantly, I think, raising your game. So that would definitely be something that's been a philosophy and a practice of mine, ever since I can remember.
Because you actually just stole my question that I was going to ask you, but that's okay. I'll ask you in a different way.
Same question.
How do you think people have pivoted over the last months? But you've actually sort of suggested that. But how do you think people have actually changed the way they do online selling now? Because I did a talk yesterday with, because there's no chemistry there. I mean, physical chemistry, about that. You can only see the head and the shoulders and a little bit of the body language, but you can't see what else is going on. So based on that, how do you think people have changed their approach? But how do you think sales leaders have helped to change that approach with that?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I mean, one thing before I answer that question is that probably the COVID situation has accelerated some of the things that were happening anyway. So,
Yeah,
I forget the exact numbers. I'd have to dig out the research, but 70 to 80% of content that buyers use to make decisions is self-discovered.
yeah,
It's a few years old now. I think it was CEB, average B2B buyer, 57% of the way
yeah.
through their
That's
buying
actually,
process before they want to pick up with the salesperson, so on and so forth. And also research from last month, October, the McKinsey research, that currently only 20% of B2B buyers are interested in going back to a face-to-face interaction with
that's right.
suppliers, and both suppliers and buyers are saying, actually, this works, because there are those downsides, as you say, from missing those non-verbal social cues, etc. However, what you're gaining is no travel time.
Yeah,
A lot of our clients are reporting, actually it's much easier to get customers on calls than it was to try to get a face to face. But so yeah, we've been working with a whole ton of organizations across the world, some of the real big players on this, because they've pivot, change, whatever language you want to do,
yeah.
because it is for many people, it's something they've done some of, but they haven't done a whole lot of.
Mhm.
um, and so for sellers, there are still some weird data showing that, quite a lot of people are not using cameras, which is I think is a big mistake, for you not to do that.
Absolutely.
So, that, and all the data shows that use of cameras helps sales success. I think you got to be more disciplined in your questioning and in your listening. And we were running we had about 400 or 500 sales leaders on from a large one of the Fortune 50s. We were doing a seminar with them on remote negotiation, and the sales leader, who was my kind of co-host,
Yeah,
he made the point that they used to, he was based in the US. When you fly in, say you fly in for a meeting in Dallas, there's almost kind of an implicit understanding that something's going to happen or some decision's going to be made because everybody's making the trouble to turn up. He
that's
said
right.
what they're finding more is that people are going, well, let's schedule another Zoom call then and pick up where we left off. So, I think we've got to be real clear what's the end in mind for the meeting. What do we want the customer to think or say or do? I think is another kind of critical thing. There is I learned this when I was managing remote teams many years ago. This 2 times rule, 2 times more communication, 2 times more clarifying, two
Mhm.
times more listening, 2 times more discipline, etc. I think find ways to drive interactivity, get the customer involved and engaged, so it's not passive. And also, when we were doing some research, I was doing research with a colleague on remote negotiation for the session I mentioned.
Mhm.
The data showed that in a virtual negotiation environment, I think the research said specifically, where negotiators deliberately were told to make 5 minutes of small talk conversation in advance rather than just going straight into the negotiation, they achieved a better commercial result, and both parties were happier and more trusting of the result that had been achieved.
Yeah,
So you've
that
got to
makes sense.
replace the walk from the lobby to the meeting room, the small talk when you're grabbing a coffee from their on-site Costa or
Yeah,
Starbucks, or because we've got to replace that human face-to-face interaction with something that is equivalent. And to answer your question about the sales leaders and the sales managers, a lot of sales leaders and sales managers are used to managing remote-based salespeople. I did as a sales manager. I had 10
Mhm.
people out in the field. So, but you've got to realize we're in this more for the long haul now. So I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah,
you've got to be thinking about, I would suggest sales leaders revisit their cadence of sales performance meetings that they have, and thinking about having maybe more but less of those. So, having your pipeline, separate your pipeline from your forecast review. But don't forget to have check-ins. So it's checking in rather than checking up, I think, is how are you doing? I always used to do this 10 field-based salespeople. If I'd not spoken to a couple of the folks in the team, I'd not been out with them coaching them, or I'd not had an opportunity or a reason, I just Friday morning, I'm driving around doing whatever. Hey Lou, how you doing? We're not spoken this week. How you doing? How's it going? What you planning for the weekend? So just check in rather than check up. And I think also just keep a focus on people's emotional, physical, kind of mental health, because we all get. I've had, 3-4 weeks ago, I had a spot of cabin fever. I'm used to working from home, but not all the time, and I just got a little bit.
You need to get out.
And just keep your eye. And just because someone's okay today, it doesn't mean they're going to be okay tomorrow. So keep those lines of communication open, and just, we got to really make sure as leaders we're looking at primary responsibility of any leader is the well-being, health, and safety of their people. It's number one priority. And people, as you come out of COVID and we come into whatever the next normal is, that I think McKinsey are calling it, they'll remember how you treated them.
Absolutely.
So that look after your people.
That's exactly what I was going to suggest and say. I think that area of trust is gone up to the next level, really. And when you do speak to your sales leaders and you do speak to your sales people, you're not necessarily talking about sales, but you're getting to know them, you're getting to know their family, you're getting to know everything else about them. And just checking in with them is probably one of the best ways to sort of motivate them in a different way, making sure that they're happy. Because once happy people go out and sell, they're more likely to sell more, because they know that their boss is there behind them, their company's behind them, and everything else is flowing in the right direction. And everyone that I've spoken to, like yourself, has said exactly the same thing, and I think that's powerful.
I mean, I don't claim to have invented the phrase or the concept, but the psychological bank account. So when I'm working with sales leaders, sales managers, between you and every single member of your team is like a psychological bank account, and it's like a real bank account. You've got to make deposits into it before you can draw anything out. So if you phone up and I'm checking up on you, Jason, you sense I don't trust you, and I'm checking up, I'm actually starting to make withdrawals. If I'm asking you to go the extra mile, be flexible, work a little extra, do something, I'm making a withdrawal. Question is, are you going overdrawn, or are you making those positive contributions by just checking up? Hey, Jason, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How are the kids? Those sort of things, but also giving them support, giving them coaching, and support and challenge, getting the right balance between support and challenges. High support, high challenge is a high performance environment. Get that balance wrong, you end up in high stress or high comfort. And neither of those is a great place for sustainable performance. So, I'd say to all sales leaders, have a look at your bank account, between your psychological bank account, between you and each of those people in your team.
I love that analogy. That's really, I'm going to borrow that. Thank you very much.
Please do. I'm sure I can't remember where that came from maybe on some training program when I was a sales manager or coaching, program. But feel free, and anyone else, because I think it's just such a nice metaphor. So a great way. Please do.
And how do you think stories now are affecting? Because there's obviously everyone saying this story is really good and all that. How do you think you packaging stories for salespeople and the gift that you can give them to create a story for the buyers and getting them to resonate in a more authentic way? And trust is a big thing, but we're also talking about vulnerability as well, because we are all vulnerable. We're not all these big superheroes of the day and like the 1980s approach. But I think how people resonate with you is a little bit of vulnerability. Like, things are not certain, as we know now, but even a couple of years, things are not certain. But also to get them on side in a way that is, you can see it from their shoes.
Yeah, I think it's it was a really powerful lesson I learnt as a sales manager. So I say, Whitbread were a great company, and they used to have this incredible outward bound leadership program where you camped out in a youth hostel it's a hostel, so like a youth hostel, amazing old building down in the West Country, and you used to do all these kind of build a raft and sail across and climb up a really high tree and jump off on a wire and all of this sort of, and all designed to take you out of your comfort zone. And some of those things can be dreadfully macho and all that sort of stuff. But this was a really, really great program. And I was in the mindset at the time I was fairly new to being a sales manager. And I was in the mindset, I'm the manager, I'm in charge, I must have the answer, I must lead from the front and lead the charge. And I was given some exercise. You were given an envelope as the leader, and you're given it the day before, and it would say, you need to go to this pond, and you've got to get this bucket of water transferred across the pond without spilling it, and all these. They were all just made up to be just really difficult. So I did all my homework, and I went down, and it's 6 a.m. I was up, and I went down and I surveyed the scene, and I put together my amazing plan, and in come my team of folks who are going to be working for me, colleagues. So I tell them what we're doing, and I do all the briefing, and we did succeed, but only really because the team started to take over and come up with kind of much better ideas. And I was taken on one side at the end by the facilitator, a lovely guy called Bernard, and he starts off with buttering me up a little. He said, Simon, he said, you are an incredibly persuasive person. He said, I can see why you're in sales. He said, you absolutely persuaded everybody to follow your plan. And I'm like, yes, I knew I was a born leader. And he said, unfortunately, your plan was absolute crap, and it's only because the team intervened that you actually succeeded. He said, any thoughts on what you might do differently the next time you're in charge? And I sat there for a moment or two, and I went, very hesitantly said, ask the team for their ideas. And he went, you got it. He said, so all throughout the week, he kept on saying to me, lead from the back, lead from the back, lead from the back. And he pushed me right on the last exercise. He said, here's your envelope. Don't look at it. I don't want you to open it until you are literally standing by the exercise with your team. And he said, I want you to brief them and then trust them. And it worked really well. And it was this thing where we were orienteering around and running around in the dark in the middle of the night in the forest, getting clues. And we arrived at one area, the last one. And there was one of the facilitators was on a pontoon 100 yards out in this dark, cold lake. And he was kind of taking the mickey, going, I got your clue. Who's coming to get it? And my team started running around like a little bit like headless chickens, because there were overhead wires and they were looking for a canoe, or how are we going to get across this lake to this thing? And then Bernard sort of makes eye contact, and he glared at me, and he went like that with his head. He went like that, as in get in the lake. And I went like that, me. And he went, get in the lake. And I'm going, hang on, but you said lead from the back. He's going, get in the lake. So I went, right. And I jumped in, and they all followed me. And it only came up to kind of here. We strode across and kind of got the clue. And in the debrief afterwards, he said, what was your learnings? I said, well, you said lead from the back. He said, yeah, because you lead from the front too often. He said, but sometimes you got to lead from the front, and sometimes you've got to lead from the back. You got to learn the difference. But the purpose of the story was, you got to involve people. You don't, as a sales manager, as a leader, you don't have to have the answer. Say to the team, I don't know the answer, but I'm really confident that if we work together, we'll collectively be able to be. So don't be arrogant. I think it was Steve Jobs who said, don't employ intelligent people and tell them what to do. Employ intelligent people and get them to tell you what to do. Now, that's another even more extreme. But the more you involve people, the more motivated they are. And you can communicate confidence as a leader if you're unconfident. So I don't know what the situation. I don't know how we're going to solve this. I don't know what's going to be coming over the hill. But I am confident that if we work together, I am confident we'll come up with some really good ideas. And I am confident that if we collaborate, we'll be able to find the solution to this problem. And that will inject the right balance, I think, of vulnerability, to use your phrase, but realism. And people respect that. They don't. But there are times they will expect you to maybe take a lead, but you don't have to take the lead and have the answer. You have to take the lead. So the more involved people are, the more motivated they are.
I love that. And that story is really impactful, and that's probably where I was actually going with my suggested question, my presupposition. Anyway, that's a different story. We'll talk about that afterwards. But anyway, that's because leaders that I think the 1980s approach is well gone, and it is sharing best ideas and sharing best practices, because you don't necessarily know all the answers. Like, I know we all experience, but there could be some 20-something-year-old that knows more than you do in something, and let them talk about it, let them collaborate, let them share the ideas. I was doing some work in Dublin, big tech company, and I was really taken back by how smart they would do it. On a weekly discussion, the sales manager would sit back and said, well, tell us your best stories around the table. What worked for you? And everyone said, well, this worked really well. Oh, let's all use that. And it was really great collaborative approach. And the sales managers just sort of stepped back. And I think that is very smart.
Well, it's focusing on and using the diversity. One, you do need diversity in a team in every sense of the word, but that also meant inclusion as well, is that they might only be 20 and they might only have worked for the company for 6 months, and maybe Fred Bloggs has been there for 20 years. So what? Why does that mean that Fred Bloggs has more experience, but the 20-year-old with 6 months experience has a less cluttered and just has a different perspective, which is really worth exploring and getting in there. It's kind of like, I don't know, back in the day, some of the big, and I used to sell into retailers, and one that I won't mention, a typical board of directors was all 55 60-year-old white blokes, and they had a big female shopper base, and you can just imagine, how just unbelievably patronizing and ridiculous would it be, all of these guys sitting around going, so what do we need to do to attract more women into our stores, and there's not a single woman in the room. You're not even conscious of your target consumer, and it's just, how do we attract more millennial customers? Well, tell you what, why don't you get some millennials on the team working out how to do it? Like, it's sadly all too common, I think.
I was actually thinking while you were speaking, I just learned design thinking, and love that approach to sales, because you really start to get to know the different aspects of knowing your customer. What do they fear? What do they think? What do they see? What do they understand? And there's a whole sort of collective array of it. And me looking into it, it's going, I really like that approach, because it really makes you understand then who else needs to get involved in there to make it, as you say, stuffed up old 50 something. I'm just in that.
Yeah, 50. Me too. Yeah, I mean, like,
anyway, we digress. But I think you need nowadays a sort of a 360 approach, a holistic approach. You need that diversity. You need that inclusion. If you're looking for that specific target audience, make sure that you have the smart people around you that know that stuff. That can make an impact on where you need to go with your products and services, and how to attract them in a new way, a new dynamic approach.
Very much.
Question I was going to ask you, I'm going to throw you out here. So a different question for you, which is going to put you on the spot. For 5 minutes, you had a gift, a superpower. What would you use it? How would you use it? But remember, it's only for 5 minutes.
Oh, I've only got it for 5 minutes. Okay. Oh, that's a good. I was going to say if it was an ongoing superpower, it would definitely be the ability to get inside somebody's head and kind of see the world through their eyes. Um, yeah, if it's for 5 minutes, from perspective, I've been reading a great book, "You Can't Hurt Me" by Dave Goggins, who is an ex Navy
Yes. Oh,
SEAL and
yes.
ultra.
Yeah, I've read
And
it
I
twice.
watched I watched Dave Goggins being interviewed, and gave a little story, a little metaphor, and he said, you know, you passed away and you've gone to heaven. And I'm not a religious person, but I think the metaphor is wonderful. And he said, you know, you sit down when you get to heaven, you sit down with God, and he's got like a little clipboard, and on one side is the stuff you've achieved. And he said on the other side is all the stuff you could have achieved, what you could have been. And his
Yeah.
concept is, you know, you're living at a 40% life. So I guess what will be amazing in for 5 minutes would be to have the insight of what that 100% looks like. And because I think sometimes it's quite difficult for us to kind of sometimes have that more unlimited viewpoint perspective to say, if all the shackles, if all the limitations, if all the BS stories that we tell ourselves and all of that kind of stuff was gone, what would you see? You know, because
Yeah.
I think that will be really kind of inspiring, and Dave Goggins stuff is kind of awesome
Oh,
about
he's up
how
at
you
a
keep.
different level.
Oh,
He's a I would call him a nutcase, a complete nutter, because he's just like he thinks, and his mindset is just I don't know, floats above everyone else in my terminology. Like he's just I do running and I do mountain running, but he does mountain running with no training and for 100 miles and go, how did you do that?
yeah, I'm not. I've got to be a note of, and my only note of caution is I really hope he's not done himself any serious damage for when he's, because yeah, I mean I got a, you know, mental tough, but that is there is something in the mentality. Having knocked around with a few of them now, guys,
Yeah,
special forces, there is something in there that is the drive. They're not motivated; they are driven,
yeah,
and you know it is a very special kind of you know, it's a very special kind of thing. I was out running locally down my canal, and I had like a t-shirt from the Paris 10 event, and I was running and I ran past this guy walking his dog, and on the way back, you know, he noticed, he kind of, I saw him look at the t-shirt, and on the way back he sort of stopped me and he said, when did you do the Paris 10, mate? And I said, oh, I did it, you know, such and such. And he said, oh, how fast? I said, oh, I'm a 50, you know, mid 50s, you know, fat boy, you know, 2 hours, like 2 hours, 15 minutes or so. I said, have you done it? He went, yeah, mate. He said, I've done it for real. You know, I was in the parachute regiment, you know, and we were having a chat, and I said it was raising money and all that sort of stuff. And we were getting on like a house on fire. And I said, have you done the fan dance? And he went, yeah, I've actually done the whole of selection. And I went, oh, blimey, right? And he went, yeah, I was in the Special Air Service. And no reason to think he wasn't, you know, because of his language, his terminology, what he was talking, you know, he clearly knew the lingo. And I said, oh, I said, I've only done the fan dances. So I said, it must be, you know, just phenomenal kind of, you know, what did it take? I couldn't do it. And he looked at me and he said, of course you could. He said, of course you could. And I went, really? He said, all right, not now. He said, he said, but in your early 20s, he said, you'd have passed selection. I said, I'm not sure I would have done, you know, I'm really not sure I've got that. And he looked at me and he said, well, you eat shit and piss in the same direction as everyone else, don't you? And I went, yeah, I guess so. And he's got this kind of ever so scary, borderline psychopathic look about him now. And he points at me and he said, it's in here and it's in here. He said, you can do it. He said, if I can do it, you can do it. If you can do it, I can do it. Right? And I'm like going, yeah, okay. Like I'm not feeling like, so we have a little bit of a chat, and I said, well, I must carry on with my run. And as I start to run off, he goes, don't forget you eat shit and piss in the same direction as everybody. Sorry if you have to bleep that, Jason, for the
I
video.
think we
But
should keep it in. I think that's perfect.
I mean, as motivational quotes go, you know, move aside Tony Robbins. I think
Yeah.
I've got that up on my. I've actually literally got that up on my whiteboard above my computer monitor in my office. So yeah, you know, and while I have to, I am going to go on record and say with the greatest of respect to him, I really don't think I'd have what it takes to do that.
Well,
You know,
especially not now. I signed up this morning. Actually, there's a virtual 26K run. I'm luckily I live on the foot of the Dublin mountains, so
yeah.
I was supposed to do it in real not in lockdown, but I signed up and it's up and down, up and down, up and down. So that's my challenge for tomorrow, which is 26K, which is what's that? 18 miles, I think.
Yeah, that's good. But I think as well is when I have one of my keynotes is how to raise your game, like a little bit of a sort of motivation with some sort of proper psychological research rather than normal garbage that some motivational speakers trot out, same old apocryphal stories. But I was at one stage I wanted to run a marathon, and I did some half marathons and a 10K to kind of get me ready. I was running with my dad in this 10K locally, and we did the 10K, and I don't anybody's ever done that. You know, there's people like me who is like amateur half hour. You know, we're never going to finish first. And then there's the whippety sort of skinny people who go off at like 1,000,000 miles an hour that I'm very jealous of and I hate. And so it was at a local school, and the last kind of 500 yards, 500 meters was up a reasonably steep hill, and then you got into the car park of the school, and then you know, as you got in there, everyone was there cheering you on. And my dad and I had finished the race, and we were in my car, and we were driving back down the road, and coming towards us was the last runner in the race, and we knew this lady was the last runner because the marshals were kind of walking along, and they were walking. I mean, she was not moving forwards very fast, bless her. And I kind of always say to the audiences, look, I don't want to be like in any way like sounding like I'm being judgmental, but let's just say she was not like physically a whippet person. You know, she went to see a GP, he'd have probably said you could probably do with losing a few, so could I, you know. And then she was like purple and sweating and in serious pain, and she was kind of like inching away up the hill. You could see in her face she was going to finish, you know. My dad used to be a sports scientist at Loughborough University. He's retired now, but has worked with the England rugby team, men and women's, British Olympic. So he's worked with elite athletes. And this is like clearly a non-elite athlete coming up. So I pull my car in to let her come past. And my dad winds down the window and starts giving her this big round of applause, you know, and keep going, because we know she's going to hit the top soon. And then her friends and her family will be there. And then as she sort of went past us, my dad goes, "Gosh, she was doing well, wasn't she? What a fantastic effort!" So this is a guy who spent his time with elite athletes, but he knows that lady was, you know, doing her best, right? And so this is the point about being the winner and all this sort of stuff, because, you know, she came last, or did she? Because, you know, she came ahead of everybody who thought, yeah, I'll do a 10K, and then never got round to doing it. Or the people who woke up on the Sunday morning and went, oh, it's a bit cold outside, I think I'll stay in bed. And she was running for a reason. Maybe she was trying to, you know, get a bit fitter. Maybe she was raising money for, I don't know, cancer research or whatever she was doing. But so she was a winner, you know, coming all shapes and sizes, you know. And I think that's the kind of the important thing is, you know, it's not always about whether people come first or second or third. Do you win? Do you win? You know, Dave Goggins talks about, do you win the war with yourself? You know, and she'll have got up there and feeling pretty rough, I imagine, but she did it. She did it, and you know, you can't ever take that away from her.
I think there's a really good story in there and a really good metaphor in there. If you just got to show up on a day-to-day basis, and you got to improve on a day-to-day basis, and especially for us salespeople, sales leaders out there, like if you don't show up, you're never going to know. And especially in this working from home now, you've got to get up. You've got to have your coffee before you start your day. You have to be productive. You have to plan your day well for you to achieve the results. Exactly what you said about the running scenario. And it's no difference. Like some days I run up and it's absolutely throwing it down with ice and snow, and it's boggy up there. I've lost my running shoe on many occasions. I had to go back in and hop and pick it out. But it's that same scenario with salespeople. Like some days, like you don't want to do it, but you have to get up and go and make those calls or those connections or the social media stuff and whatever else to be successful. And I think that's
Just
wonderful.
Yeah, you've just got to get started, haven't you? That's the thing. I think if people are ever having that day, where you think, God, I really don't want to pick up the phone. I really don't want to do this. It just start and the motivate, just a little bit, a little baby step. And I think that's a good motivational, point. I remember, we were talking before, and you had Tom Ziegler on, who's, Zig Ziglar's, Zig was, I used to listen to him on cassette tape driving around. And I remember him poking fun at the audience, going, so you're worth $1 million. Well, whoopee doobie for you, he said. So how much should you be worth? So a lot of the time we're comparing ourselves to other, I'm doing much better than that person. Yeah, but the question is, how well are you doing compared to what you could be doing? It's that kind of, so that, for example, that lady's probably not anytime soon going to come first, but that will be a ridiculous comparison. So great, my territory's 10% up on last year. Fantastic. Well, if it's still like 25% of what that territory should be looking like, you're still not doing a great job, are you? So I think that's some of the challenge sometimes.
Like, I've done everything arseways today, excuse my term. I should have really introduced you properly, and I was in the back of my head, I didn't really give you a proper introduction, but I think you should do that, because you've written 5 books. I've only read one of them. Sorry about that, but I can see
disgraceful, Jason. I expect you to. I'm going to set you a performance plan to get. No, thank you for that.
I like the neurocell because I'm fascinated by neuroscience. I love how brain, the Dr. McLean's 1960s approach about the 3-layer brain and all of that. So I'm fascinated. I will have a read of that. Your bare knuckle selling, bare knuckle negotiation, bare knuckle customer service, the inner winner, which is awesome. Tell us something more about yourself, so we can finish up the golden
sure. I suppose the overriding, I suppose, descriptive label would be sales transformation. So be that, so obviously the output of that is sales performance, but that will also, cover off things like people, process, technology, making sure those are all brought together and taking a kind of a holistic, more systemic view of how to drive sales transformation, rather than just doing one or two. Bringing a CRM system in and of itself is not going to transform your sales. So it's a combination of sales leadership, coaching, technology, sales process, all of these things, sales enablement platforms, whatever you're doing. So I kind of do that. Target clients, and my key client base is sort of large corporate, Fortune 500, FTSE 100, FTSE 250. So work internationally with a number of kind of leading companies. I'm also a professional speaker, although I've not been doing a lot of standing on stages, obviously, recently, like many of my many. And then I'm the sort of co-founder of the Sales Chat Show podcast, saleschatshow.com, driving your sales forward with my good buddies Phil Jessen and Graham Jones. So I think we're on like about 160, 170 episodes now of the Sales Chat Show, which we love doing as kind of helping salespeople to kind of move forwards. And I've been from a personal front, lived sort of Leicestershire countryside, lifelong interest in martial arts and combat sports. Been married to my wife Karen, it'll be 30 years next year, and my son Tom has disappointed me. I've got to say, Tom has disappointed me enormously. When you bring your child up and you really hope they're going to follow in your footsteps, and I was really hoping he would be, moving into the worlds of sales, but unfortunately, he's decided to become a doctor. So he's currently a junior doctor. So a dreadful. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, he's bless him. He's stepped up early, as did all of his year, to go and help out with the COVID situation. So obviously, we're amazingly proud. But definitely, I think some of that positive mental attitude and coaching will have helped him to deal with some of the challenges he faced.
Yeah, you've sold him his own personal dream, and to make sure he does what he wants to do in his life, and you give him the gift.
I'm poking. Obviously, I'm having a bit of fun, but I think way too many parents want their, they do sort of, I don't know, vicarious fulfillment via their children. You gotta let your kids find their own path. You got to let people, and the same thing. I wanted to go into sales. I wanted to go into sales training, but my boss and my boss's boss wanted me to go on to be, account director and then a bigger account, and so they had a plan for me. It's my career, it's my life, it's what I want to do. So if you've got people working for you and they want to go and do something else, if you stop them, you're going to lose them. So maybe they're going to bring value to your organization in a very, very different way than maybe what you think they should. So I think that's part of that open, honest, transparency. And I was really lucky to have some great bosses, and I was on a conference call with my boss. I was head of talent for a while for Western Europe, and my boss was the VP of HR. And we were looking at reviewing the talent retention list, and we were on a teleconference. I was in the UK, he was in Belgium, and we used to have a list of people we wanted to keep. And part of my job was to assess where they were and talk to them and color code them: red, amber, green. As in green, we think they were going to stay with us. Amber, got to keep her eye. Red, significant risk. So we're going through it. And he went, "Oh, now we've got to review the HR team." He said, "This will be a bit awkward because of our, some of your colleagues are there." And he said, "It's going to be a bit interesting." He said, "Because we've got your name on this list, haven't we?" And I went, "Yeah." And he said, "So what colour should I put you down as, Simon?" And at this stage, I sort of had a conversation with my wife about what I wanted to do, and she's been really supportive. And I realised this was the moment, and my heart started pounding in my chest. And I said, "You're KPI'd on this retention list, aren't you? Same as me." And he went, "Yeah." I said, "Mark, I think you ought to take me off the list." And there was this long pause, and he said, "I knew we were going to be having this conversation sooner or later." He said, I know your aspirations lie outside the organization, and da, da, da. And he was incredibly supportive. And he said, "I can't make any promises, but if an opportunity presents itself, I promise you I'll, pursue that on your." And then about 3-4 months later, got the phone call, "If you really do want to go and do something else," he said, I've got the opportunity if you want to take it." So he was a great leader, he understood that, it was time for me to go and do something else. Now, I obviously wanted to go off and do my own thing, but as well, maybe somebody wants to leave your organization because at the moment they can't progress or whatever. If they go and you leave on really good terms and you keep in touch, there's always the opportunity you bring them back in later with a bit more experience, or it doesn't quite work out. Bring them back in. I've always been very against this idea that somebody who leaves is a traitor. Come on. Really?
Yeah, I agree. They left on their own terms, but I always agree with that. Exactly. I keep in contact with my old bosses from 15 years ago because and I do running with one of them because I generally like them, but always keep your doors open because you just don't know. Or there could be an opportunity for you to work with them in the future or collaborate.
Well, if it's never happened, but if somebody said, "Hey, this guy Mark, what would you used to work with him? What's he like?" I'd say, "If you get the chance to get this guy in your organization, I'd jump at it." Yeah. So you never know, do you? It's network.
Yeah, networking is hugely important, and I do agree with that. Look, I think we've been up here for a long time now, so look, I really appreciate all of your time.
Thank you very much.
And you've given so much away, and what I want to do, and with all of the stuff that I do now, is to give back and make other people learn. Because if they can take out one piece of advice of what you've said, they're going to probably take out more than that. I think that's we've both done a good job, and you should give yourself a tap on the back and say thank you for that, because that's absolutely awesome. So, Simon, thanks again. You've been listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. My name is Jason Cooper. You can find out more in the notes afterwards when I share them, all of the LinkedIn and Twitter and Simon's website and all of his 5 books, and I've only read one of them, but you'll be able to find all of that in the show notes. So again, really appreciate that, and thanks a lot.
Awesome, Jason. Thanks for having me on.